all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Welcome to Veterans Radio. I am Jim Fossone. I'm the officer of the deck today. We've got some great programs for you. I think you'll find very interesting. We always want to remind you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or by going to veteransradio.net, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.net. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We also want to thank Eisenhower Center. It's a brain injury recovery center. Learn more about eisenhowercenter.com. They're located in Michigan and in Florida. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. Contact us if you'd like to be a sponsor on Veterans Radio, and let's move on to our program. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today Rob Donovic. Rob, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
And Rob Donovic is a member of the Michigan Army National Guard, and we're going to talk about some of his recent deployments and experiences. But let's talk about who Rob is before that. I know you're a Livonia City Councilman. You are a private fixed-wing pilot, which you might even be more proud of, and a reserve police officer, son of immigrants from Albania who have a family restaurant in Livonia, Michigan called Marco's Cozy Diner. But tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, first, Jim, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. You guys do a lot in the community, and I was excited to be a guest on your show today. My family immigrated to America in the 1980s. And Dad came here from Albania and wanted to make a better life for his kids. Had us a few years later. We were living here in the Livonia area, went to Livonia Public Schools, grew up here, grew up around the veteran community. I always thought joining the military would be super interesting in the fact of what little boy doesn't want to shoot guns and blow stuff up as a young guy. And just having the impact of being around veterans, mostly your Vietnam era, your early Desert Storm era veterans, and they talk about their experiences in the military, and I was like, wow, I really want to serve, especially with my family coming to America with nothing, and now I have this opportunity. I get this good education, I get to live a really nice lifestyle in the metropolitan area. How can I give back? And coupled again with just being a little boy and wanted to get paid to shoot guns, and then wanted to give back to my country, ultimately I found the Army National Guard here in Michigan, and I'm in my 5th year now of a 6-year contract.
And when you went in, did you have any preconceived notions about what your job specialty was going to be, or where they might send you?
Oh yeah, I mean, ultimately, I knew that being in the current War on Terror campaign, I hoped and I prayed actually that I would deploy. I mean, that was the whole purpose of me joining the military, was to serve my country and to be a part of this group, this family of soldiers that have left their families to defend ours here at home. What an honor to do that. And then that dream really does come true, and I get the call saying, hey, we're going to the Middle East. So every soldier that serves, that's their ultimate goal, is to be able to defend their country and use all the training and everything you do from the time you go to basic training, prior to basic training, getting ready for basic training, then you get your unit and your training. You're spending all these hours sleeping outside, and you do this constant training rotation over and over and over again, and you're hoping that one day you get that call. And my unit got that call like so many thousands of soldiers before.
When we talk to folks who join the military and maybe don't come from a military family, We always ask about mom and dad. How did mom and dad think about this adventure by their son?
Naturally, they're not excited. I mean, my dad was like, wow, my boy wants to join the military and defend this principle behind why I came here. And that really ultimately, looking back on the reasons why I joined, and I really understand at that point. But now, being on city council, I get to talk to so many different people from different walks of life, and then my own personal just experiences throughout life. I was able to serve with people and be one of those people that serve, that are helping defend those freedoms, that this whole idea behind America, and to be able to be a small part of that. And it really puts things in perspective. I mean, how many immigrants come from different countries and they want to come to America for this better life? They don't necessarily want to be rich, right? I mean, just live a life with opportunity and the freedoms that we enjoy that sometimes we take for granted because we've never known anything differently. And being over there in the Middle East, you see how people live. And you really say, man, I'm happy to be American because we really do have an amazing life. And that doesn't say that we have things we need to work on, of course. Naturally, everybody does and every country does. But to be a part of that and see the honor and the how happy my family were, my parents, of course they're sad, but at the same time, like, wow, like that's my son. Like any parent is happy of their kid when they're doing something.
Well, they're always happier too when you get home and all the pieces are still put together. What was your MOS here? And I should say, you're currently serving. Mm-hmm. You got another year on the contract, but what's your MOS?
So I'm interesting. I'm an 11 Bravo infantryman. That's what I joined. And infantry. They always say God made the sky blue because he loves the infantry. I mean, that's our color, and we love the infantry. We're the ground pounders and yada, yada, yada. So there's a lot of always, infighting amongst the different MOSs. There's some 200 different MOSs. But then I had the opportunity to join an aviation unit, a Chinook CH-47 Chinook helicopter unit based out of Selfridge Air Base. And what a cool experience to get to flying around on a Chinook helicopter and man a gun. So I'm a door gunner on a Chinook helicopter. So I'm in a weird position where I'm an 11 Bravo infantry soldier, but I'm also on a Chinook aviation team. And we operate as a 5-soldier crew, 2 pilots and then 3 air crew members in the back.
And tell us what the duties of the 3 air crew members would be then.
Yeah, so we each have our sectors, and you were either left gun, right gun, or you're working the ramp. And the Chinook helicopter, it's a really big helicopter with 2 big rotor systems on the top. And normally, when you're in country in a combat zone, each door gunner, each crew chief is looking out their sector of fire. Not only are you scanning for other aircraft or objects to make sure you don't run into them, because the aircraft is such a large aircraft. It's some 30-some feet long, and then plus the actual rotor blades that ends up being about 100 feet long. So you want to make sure you're not running into anything, but then also, of course, any kind of ground-to-air enemies or air-to-air enemies. So you're constantly working with the pilots up front. And the Chinooks are unique in that we all work together. The 2 Chinook pilots are flying the aircraft and getting us to our next point, our next destination, but then the air crew members in the back are also helping the pilots get there. So not only security, but making sure we don't run into anything. And then when we're actually doing our missions can vary. It can be deliberate missions where you're bringing ground troops in to do a deliberate operation, or normally we're doing a lot of cargo transportation, troop movement. So we'd pick up troops in Kuwait and transfer them to Baghdad, Iraq, and then take them from Baghdad, Iraq to somewhere in Syria, all the way to Saudi Arabia. I mean, we would transport troops all across the area of operation. It just depended on their mission. And then also cargo. We're constantly transporting equipment, especially in the Chinook helicopter. It's so powerful. You can sling load another aircraft underneath you. You give 2 long ropes, basically, and you can carry an aircraft across the entire desert.
Not great on gas mileage, but you can pull it off.
You sure can, yeah.
So did you work primarily with this same 5-man crew?
Yeah, normally we were the same crew, and of course things change, but it was normally the same 5 people. Some you fly with more, some you fly with less. We had over there, my company, it's comprised of about 60 soldiers. Half of them were up in northern Iraq, and the other half were in Camp Buehring area in Kuwait. And then we'd operate out of western Iraq in the Al-Andar province out of Al-Assad Air Base. So we were split up throughout the region to kind of conquer, the entire, it's such a large area that we're covering. Again, we'd be in Saudi Arabia to Syria to Baghdad to Jordan to Kuwait, all all over the place. So we had 12 Chinooks total. 6 were in northern region, 6 were in the southern region. and we'd fly all over the place. Some weeks we flew 6-7 days a week. Some we'd only fly twice a week. It just really depends on what was going on at the time, and then also the threat level.
And give us the time frame, Rob Donovic. You've just come back. Give us the time frame that you were over there doing this.
Yep. So through the Army National Guard, we left Michigan in July 4th, actually, most American day possible, and we'd actually go and train at another location for a month or so, do a lot of medical stuff, paperwork stuff, all the preparation stuff you do before you leave the country. I got over to the Middle East shortly after that, and then I just got back May 19th, May 20th.
And this is, nobody will ever forget this year because it was a year of COVID.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit how strange that was as you moved around the country here in the United States, but then went overseas with this pandemic hanging over everybody's head.
Yeah, so a lot of the soldiers I work with, most of them had 4 or 5 deployments. Specifically, someone I look up to a lot, CW5 Mark Tyler. I think this is his 5th deployment maybe in the last since 2002. Denny Gervin, Sergeant First Class Denny Gervin. This is number 6 or 7, I believe. So these guys have a lot of experience, whereas this is my first deployment overseas. And they say this deployment was like nothing else because of COVID. I mean, the restrictions, the fact that we couldn't move anywhere, we couldn't go anywhere before getting to country and after getting to country. They were so strict about what we could do because they were worried. On top of that, when you're overseas, we were transporting troops. A lot of times they would be wearing masks because they were worried about, COVID spreading across the different countries. In an aviation unit, specifically the Chinook unit, we were constantly moving so often that we got lucky that the big Army, couldn't really get their teeth into us with COVID because we were constantly moving, so they could never keep track of us. Where a lot of the ground soldiers, they were constantly having to go through COVID screening and tests and this and that. So we got lucky in that we were in our own compound. We were kind of separated. But I will say COVID had a big impact on a lot of missions. There was a lot of missions that got canceled. From a lot of friends I know on the ground side, they were doing patrol combat operations on the ground. A lot of their stuff was actually canceled because DOD and the CENTCOM area didn't want COVID to be spreading because it was such an unknown territory for everybody. So it did even affect the military.
You would have been still overseas at the time that vaccines became available here in the United States. Tell us a little bit about the experience of vaccination while you were overseas.
Yeah, vaccination, if the soldiers wanted it, the soldiers could get it. Now, it doesn't mean it was available all the time. I mean, there was, they'd offer the vaccine and soldiers would volunteer for it immediately. And some said, hey, I'm not really sure yet. But it was available. It was a soldier's discretion if they want the vaccine. We've actually multiple times we flew COVID vaccines or equipment to different bases. We worked with the Charlie Med helicopters, which are basically the ambulance of the sky, and COVID really affected them because they were transporting COVID positive patients from facility to facility or base to base. So we'd be in Syria, which is very desolate. There's nothing out there, so they don't have the medical supplies that they need or equipment to be taken care of. So we'd have to transport to another base within the country so that they can get that medical attention. So whether it be vaccines or just COVID patients, we felt that.
As you talk about how much airtime you have, I know pilots keep their logs of air hours. Do the door gunners?
Yeah, so I've logged about 253 hours. So put that comparison to prior deployments. A lot of our aircrew members got 400 hours in a deployment, and my total time in a Chinook is 253 hours. Whereas in a lot of these guys have more than that. For Mr. T, for example, has, I don't know, maybe 5,000 hours, like just crazy. Yeah, and I'm probably not doing him justice. He's probably got more than that.
He'll let you know.
Yeah.
It is a remarkable opportunity to get up and get a bird's eye view, isn't it? And I've seen some of the photos that you've posted, and we're going to talk a minute about social media and how this deployment's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But talk about that as an infantryman, to get the opportunity to be a door gunner on a Chinook, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm up in the sky.
My deployment experience is unlike the majority of soldiers. I mean, being in an aviation flight crew, you really have the best of both worlds. Not only do you get to fly in an amazing aircraft and get to do amazing things, but you see parts of the country that the majority of soldiers will never see. Service members will spend 9 months overseas, a year overseas, and only see the same four walls in their office or the same patrol area of operation. Whereas in me, I mean, I'd be in 3 countries in one day. So it was long hours. We'd have long flight days. Sometimes you'd fly 8 hours in a day. Sometimes you fly 2 hours in a day. But with that being said, I was able to experience so much of the region. And here I am seeing Lake Tartar in northern Iraq, where it was all man-made in the 60s or 70s, I believe. And it's just this crystal blue in a country with so much chaos and so much going on. This beautiful, clear, calm lake in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, what the heck? Like, how do you think of Iraq and you're in Baghdad where it's crazy and all this stuff's going on, or you're in Kuwait where there's a million people moving around at one time and it's just so hectic. And then here you are in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert where there's just this sand that flows for hundreds of miles. And then you see a camel in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, how the heck did that camel get there? So
does he know where he is and where he's going?
Those things can transport for days. They know exactly where they're going.
Yeah. I think you were in, if I clipped this right from one of our notes, Iraq, Kuwait, Jordan, Syria, and Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
So going back to this comment of, on any given day, I might be in 2 or 3 different countries. Mm-hmm. You actually touched one way or another 5 of them during this almost year deployment. And you naturally, this is universal for all veterans. We're away during the holidays.
Yeah.
In your instance, it certainly would have been the football season, which may or may not be a holiday. But Thanksgiving this year, nobody missed much. But Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. Yeah. Talk a little bit about the experience of today's military member through those holidays.
Yeah, I will always say I had it easy. Again, being an aviation company and flight crew, you get to see so many different things, and we were transporting gifts for different soldiers so that they can get their gifts from their families and their loved ones, and that was really awesome to be a part of that. And then you get really close to the soldiers you're with, especially in a flight company when you're spending so much time with these certain, handful of people. You're living in a tent, you're using a porta potty, you're sleeping together, you're flying the same aircraft. I mean, everything, you're so close together. And then here comes Christmas, and that was big for me, spending Christmas in Iraq. Here I am in Western Iraq and Al Asad Air Base, really remote part of the country, not a lot over there, and I'm spending it with the closest people that I've ever made connections with, and let's face it, you hate them. You're spending so much time together, you can't stand it, and then at the same time, here you are spending Christmas together, and you're singing Christmas holiday carols and whatnot, and you're just laughing and joking, having the best time. Thanksgiving, here we all sit at a table together at Thanksgiving, and there's so many. You miss your family, your immediate family, because you're gone from them, but you picked up another family in the same way.
And I think that's something that if you haven't been through that kind of experience, whether it's, as you say, as a soldier, as an air aviator, as somebody on a ship, that becomes the family.
It does, yeah.
And substitutes during those holidays, which would otherwise be pretty depressing.
Yeah.
What's really different, though, today is social media and the ability to be on deployment but still be connected. How did you find the connection that you were able to keep between the deployment and the folks back here in Livonia, Michigan, because of the social media aspect?
Yeah, well, you look at situations like Sergeant Brian Shipman, one of our flight engineers, been in the military for many years, was in Afghanistan, and now this deployment, he had his firstborn while he was gone. And he tried to get home, but it just couldn't happen. So, here his wife has their firstborn, and Brian's over here in the Middle East with us. And he was able to see pictures of his child. I remember we were in Kuwait, and we came down to our crew shack, a little locker room, it's a little trailer basically we have, and we sat around until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. He was sleeping on the couch waiting for his child to be born. And just waiting, because he knew at any point he was going to get that FaceTime call. And the fact that he was able to share with that and be there for it, even though it was virtual, even though it was through a phone, of course he wanted to be there in person, but he was able to see that for himself. What an amazing thing technology has been able to give us is that experience that you could be thousands of miles away and basically still be in the same room. Specifically for me, I was able to post pictures on social media and kind of help provide a context behind what we're doing over there. I hear that so often now that I'm back, is people say, I love seeing your pictures. I felt like I was there with you. I never really knew what soldiers do over there, and here you are providing a firsthand account of what's going on. So to be able to inspire people about that, that was awesome to play that role.
Well, and I do think because so few people serve nowadays that they're just really disconnected in what you do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what you do is, nation building is a lousy term, but a lot of it's humanitarian, a lot of it's medical, a lot of it's just, making sure that the daily grind goes on without any conflict.
Yeah.
And so being able to communicate that is a whole lot different than what they might see in a TV movie where every minute somebody's blowing stuff up and shooting things up and killing folks, and that's just not reality.
People's perception is always just combat, and of course, hey, you're in the Middle East, it's very dangerous, you're in a combat zone, and at any moment something can happen, and so many soldiers have died in this war, and you think of them and you send your regards to their family and how sad it is that they have to deal with this, but at the same time, there's a lot of great things that we did. I mean, I'll always remember flying over Syrian villages and seeing the Syrians waving little American flags and the kids on the top of the rooftops waving at us because they loved that America was there to help them. So many stories of soldiers in the past that I served with that talked about, they were flying ballots in Iraq to help them have one of their first democratic elections held. And they were flying ballots to make sure that they get to the locations they needed to get to, and soldiers guarding voting booths so that they could have the right to vote and not be intimidated. So while people can have different agreements about being overseas and why we're there, etc., at the same time, you're able to help a lot of people.
Well, as you mentioned, it can be, it's a dangerous area, but flying in particular is a dangerous activity. And unfortunately, there's always some loss of life, whether it be training accidents or regular missions. And while you were over there, you experienced some of that.
Yeah, and I was super happy that everyone in my unit came home, went back to their families. And again, we all rely on one another to be there for each other in any times of need. And then you also help with other soldiers that are going through things. And I will say, nowadays, there's so many organizations that help with veterans when they get home from a combat zone. Different resources like what you and your family do, and then so many businesses, and then so many actual governmental agencies and the VA and whatnot. There really is an emphasis to help our soldiers once they serve our country overseas. When they come back, it's now our job here as civilians to serve our veterans that are dealing with the issues they're dealing with.
I did want to back up on the social media and the staying connected for one more thing, which is, as a sitting city councilman, every 2 weeks or so, you've got regular meetings and votes to do. Yeah. How did that work out?
First of all, I will say that my colleagues on council and the leaders on the leadership staff in the city were just great to deal with. They were super understanding. I was 7-8 hours ahead, a different time zone, so a lot of times my questions may be, middle of the night, and that might not be the most convenient time, but they went out of their way to make sure that they could, be available to me. In addition, my military leadership was just great. I mean, they were so active and helpful. Said, whatever you need to do to continue to serve on council, you can do it. Now, granted, you're still here and you still need to do your job, and we still have an operation and a mission to complete, but we're here to help. So my council meetings typically were at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, but because I had Wi-Fi in my little area and I had the access to the internet, I was able to, make all my council meetings and the public hearings and the study sessions. So I was able to still be an active member on council, and then also I still had tons of calls. It was funny, not a lot of people knew I left. So I was still getting emails and texts, hey, my trash wasn't picked up, or hey, I'm pissed off about this, whether positive or negative. And I'd be like, well, hey, I'll help out, and I'd forward their concern somewhere else, and they'd say, hey, I'd love to meet with you next week and say hi and thank you. Well, you know what? Let's get a rain check for a couple months because I'm not there yet. So.
Well, that's pretty seamless if they don't know you're going. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So one of the things I guess I'd like to close with is to get from you sort of your view on whether it's first generation immigrants joining the military to serve, or just a lot of young people today don't know anybody, and they don't. Maybe they think there's some good to doing that for them personally, but they don't, they haven't heard the sales pitch, if you will.
Yeah.
And you're 5 years into the 6-year contract. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised they haven't made you sign up before they brought you back to the country.
They do.
Yeah. But give us a little bit of your philosophy on what you'd tell young folks about this opportunity to serve.
Yeah, the honor I feel and the people I work with is really what makes it great, and you get to give back to your community. And the thing is, you don't have to work in a Chinook. You don't have to be a infantryman. There's so many MOS's roles, jobs in the military, whether you want to work as an attorney, a litigator, whether you want to work in a career field like working with your hands, electricians, plumbers. The list goes on that the military offers people, but it also offers a pathway to get your education taken care of. It offers a pathway to be a part of something much bigger than any one person, to be a part of this organization that its whole goal is to protect our country. You don't have, to your point about movies, you don't have to be in a shoot 'em up, bang bang position. You can be in a position that really helps people still, but just is differently. So I think we have to get past this idea that the military is only getting yelled at and it's miserable. And of course, there's a lot of that. It's not fun sleeping outside all the time. It's not fun using a porta potty, but there's also a lot of great benefits to being in the military. You just have to do a little bit of reading.
Have you scrubbed all the sand out of all the crevices at this point?
I still find sand in my clothes. I'm still unpacking because you're gone for a year. You accumulate some stuff, and I have these big tough boxes, and they're just full of my stuff. And sand gets over everything. Sand, dust, you name it, it's everywhere. It covers every inch of everything you have. So I find sand in my bedroom. I'm laughing. I'm like, where is this coming from? It's from that dang box.
You'll be shaking that out for a while. Yeah. And we want to thank Rob Donovic of the Michigan Army National Guard, a Chinook gunner who just came back from deployment, for spending a little time with Veterans Radio today and giving us a kind of a view of what it's like to be deployed in 2020, 2021. Rob, thanks for your service. Continue on with it, and I know that your family is particularly proud of what you've done.
Yeah, I appreciate what you've done for us, and I was really excited for this opportunity. It's the civilian community like you and so many others that motivate soldiers to stay in the military, to serve, because there is really a great partnership between the civilian every day back home and then the soldiers that are doing their job. So to be a part of this organization, be a part of your radio, it's awesome. I appreciate it, and thank you for what you do.
You got it, Rob. Thanks.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Faussone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by going to veteransradio.net. And until next time, you are dismissed.
If you have a VA claim denied by the Board of Veterans' Appeals, contact Legal Help for Veterans at 1-800-693-4800. They're experts in handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Their number again, 1-800-693-4800.
We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Eisenhower Center, VA Ann Arbor Health Care System, the Vietnam Veterans of America Charles S. Kettles Chapter, Ann Arbor, Michigan, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423 in Ann Arbor, and the American Legion Press Corn Post 46, also in Ann Arbor. They keep us on the air, as does your support. Go to Facebook, go to veteransradio.net, and support our efforts. And until next time, you are dismissed.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.